everyone. So I decided to finally make the video of why my son was in intensive care when he was born. There will be a lot of detail in here. Some things I won't mention. I won't mention like the hospital name and whatever. But other than that, let's get to talking. Okay. So my son, Julian, well, his name is Ezekiel, but we call him Julian. He was born October 29, 2017. It was a Sunday. He was born around 2:15. He was born. So, before I had him, my mom had flown here from California. She flew here on October 25th. So on the 28th, which was a Saturday, my mom, my husband, my stepson, and myself, we were doing DoorDash because at the time my husband was unemployed. He was working with DoorDash. So it was around 12 in the afternoon when I actually started feeling pain. But it wasn't like super bad. I was like, oh my god, I'm dying. I have to go to the hospital or whatever. So throughout the day, I was walking. I was bouncing on my ball, drinking tons of water. And then around 7 at night, we were doing DoorDash. So the last stop that we went to was an Olive Garden, which is close to my house. And we went to the Olive Garden because we had to pick up food for somebody. And at that point, I could not take it anymore. The contractions were unbearable, super painful. I felt like I was going to pass out of how painful the contractions were. So then my husband rushed me to the hospital. We went to the Women's Care Center, which that was where I was supposed to give birth. He dropped me and my mom off, and he took my stepson back to his mom. And then around 9:30, they checked me to see how far dilated I was. I was at a 4, and they needed me to be a 5 to actually stay. So they gave me an hour, and within that hour, they gave me like medicine. They put me on an IV, and they had me walking the lounge maybe for like 30 minutes, maybe less. I want to say maybe it was like 25 or 20 minutes that I was walking. And keep in mind, my husband was not with me. I was by myself with my mom. At that time, I was a little upset because I wanted him to be there with me. But he decided, well, he didn't decide. He had to go drop off his son. Anyways, so they had me walking for like 20 minutes and such. So after the 20 minutes of walking, they checked me again, and I was dilated to a 5. So they told me, okay, you're gonna stay. So at that point, I was like, oh my god, it's getting real. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna have my baby. I was expecting for him to come like in an hour, but then they told me, yeah, you have to wait until you're like a 10. I was a 9.5 or 10 when I started pushing. And then I started crying like a baby. Like, I have never cried like that before. My mom was holding my hand and she was praying. And then my husband had finally came back, and I felt a little calmer. I felt a little more relaxed that he was there with me. And after he had came, the nurse told us that she wanted to give me some medicine so that I could pretty much be high, as how she explained it. I would be high, I wouldn't feel anything, and it would knock me out. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So she gave me a pill. I immediately started feeling sleepy, and I fell asleep. But I couldn't really sleep because they would come in every like 30 minutes to like reposition me. So it sucked. And then The worst pain obviously was the epidural. I hated the epidural so much. That was the worst pain of my life. Luckily, I was drugged up, but I still, ugh, horrible. And I can just remember the face my husband gave me when I reacted to the epidural. And that's something that I'm never going to forget. So after the epidural, I was feeling a little better. I was more awake at that time. And I think my mom was asleep. Hours later, around I don't remember what time my water broke. But nobody noticed that my water broke. I noticed that my water broke. I told my mom, my water broke. And the nurses were like, no, you just peed. I was like, no, I didn't. My water broke. They didn't listen to me. So pretty much my baby was in my belly with no water. He had no oxygen or whatever. And it took them maybe like 3 hours to realize that my water broke when they checked me again. And then they started putting a bunch of stuff on me. They told me that I had a fever. I knew I had a fever because I was shivering the entire time. And then they gave me medicine. They put me on an IV, obviously. They put me on a bunch of stuff. My hand was literally so bruised after when they took everything off me. I don't have any scars, obviously, but it was horrible. So with that being said, my son was in my belly with no water. He was, when he was born, he had a fever. And they told me, oh, you had a fever when you were pushing, so you passed the fever to him. And at that moment, I was like, I felt horrible. I mean, I was like, oh my God, I could have killed my son or something because I gave him a fever. And after they told me he had a fever, they gave him to me for maybe 15 minutes to hold. After those 15 minutes, I didn't see him. I didn't see him for like another 3 hours because they took him away. My husband was with him. They put an IV on him. They had him on antibiotics and all that stuff because apparently what I gave him, a fever, led to meningitis. What meningitis is, it's an infection in your brain, from what they explained to me and what I've read, I guess. So they put him on antibiotics. So the antibiotics, it was supposed to be like 18 days of antibiotics for him. So before I knew any of that, I was in my room, and they would just come in, they would come out with him, take him, bring him. Breastfeeding was amazing. He's 8 months old now. He only breastfed for 6 months. So I just loved having him with me. The little time that I had with him, I loved it. I would cry so much because I was just so amazed of what a beautiful little boy he was. Later then, maybe like a day after, which was October 30th, a Monday, his pediatrician came in and told me, hey, your son is very sick. So at that time, they told me, we have to put him in intensive care. My husband wasn't there with me. He was here at the house, and I just felt super lost, like I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to feel that my son was going to be in intensive care. And then when they took him, the nurses came in and rushed him to intensive care. I had just given birth. I can't run. I couldn't run. I couldn't walk fast. I couldn't keep up with her. So my mom, who was with me at the time, she went with me to the intensive care. And just seeing them do so many things to my baby was probably one of the hardest things I have ever seen. And again, my husband wasn't there for me, but immediately when I called him, he rushed over. And I think the mistake I made was I was hovering over him. I didn't want nobody to touch him. I didn't want no one over him. And I pretty much saw how they were like putting the IV on him, putting all this stuff on him. And that's something I don't think I'll ever forget. Hearing my baby scream in pain because there were needles going inside of him. And then right when my husband got there, he just had to push me, pull me away, and just started hugging me. I was a mess. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't sleep. To the point where the nurses told me I couldn't be there with him anymore because seeing him there was affecting my milk, and they told me that him feeling me so depressed and sad would make him sad. So they put schedules on me and limited my visit time. My visit time was from, I don't remember when was my visit time, but they had schedules on me. I could see him in the morning, in the afternoon, at night. Passing 9 p.m., I couldn't go see him. I couldn't see him at all. And that was the worst for me because my house was just so quiet. And I would tell my husband, our baby is born and there's no baby crying in here. It was just the worst ever. So, everyone would tell me, like, your son's gonna be okay, he's gonna be okay. Thank God he is. He's 8 months old now, and he's the best baby ever. But that time that he was in intensive care was the worst for me. I've actually never really talked about it. He occasionally still has his episodes when I assume he has headaches. His pediatrician told me that those are his headaches. His headaches are pretty bad. And he cries so much. So it's just so, how can I put it? It's frustrating knowing that your baby is in pain, but you can't really do anything. What I have to do for him is just rub my hand through his head so that he can calm down. Honestly, I don't wish any mother the pain to seeing their baby cry so much in pain, watching other people put needles inside of him and stuff. The only time he was calm was when I was in the room. The nurses would always tell me that he would cry his lungs out when I wasn't there. And they would tell me he's waking up all the other babies because they cry so much. And it was like the worst part of my life. But after 16 days, or I want to say it was more because he was on antibiotics since he was born. But after a few days, my mom left. She went back home. and my mother-in-law came, so I wasn't completely alone. And then when my mother-in-law left, she was only here for a weekend. It was just me. I was the only one visiting him. My husband got sick, so they wouldn't let him inside the NICU because they didn't want him to infect the babies or anything. And then after a few more days, I was able to bring him home. They told me that he was a lot better. Something that I should keep in mind is that he would get headaches. He will scream, but he is now home. He's well taken care of by me. What I do appreciate so much that the nurses did was how careful they were with him, how amazing they were with my baby. At that time there was only like maybe 3 babies there, or 4, and there were 2 nurses there, and they were amazing. They gave my baby a lot of attention. Whenever something was wrong, they would immediately call me, and that's pretty much it. I'm lucky now that my baby is very healthy, such a fatty, 8 months old, and he's crawling. He's super talkative. He loves music. He loves food. He's not very social. He doesn't really like to be in crowded places. He's very low key. He's more of a lone soldier, which I'm okay with it because I'm the same way. I'd rather be by myself. But yeah.